Λοιπόν, τώρα θα κάνουμε τη μετάβαση από τη Βαλμάδα Ανατολικό Θεσσαλονίκη Κλίντον 6 χρόνια. Θα πάμε από την Ιωάννα που έχει κάνει όλα αυτά τα φανταστικά πράγματα αλλά και τις πολλές αποτυχίες. Θα πάμε σε έναν άνθρωπο, τον Mike Snyder, ο οποίος είναι ο ακόλουθος πολιτιστικών, αν το λέω σωστά. Μορφωτικός ακόλουθος. Να το fuck up το δικό μου. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Ούτε καν στημένο να ήταν. Πολύ ωραία. Θα πάμε στο Mike, ο οποίος δουλεύει για το Υπουργείο Εξωτερικών των ΗΠΑ της Αμερικής. Οπότε καταλαβαίνετε ότι η διαφορά με την Ιωάννα είναι ότι όταν κάνει fuck up η Ιωάννα, μπορεί μερικοί co-founders να μην είναι χαρούμενοι. Όταν κάνει fuck up ο Mike...
Καλησπέρα σας. Το πρώτο fuck-up μου σήμερα απόψε θα είναι ότι η ομιλία μου θα είναι στα αγγλικά. I did study Greek, but I can't really talk about all my fuck-ups in Greek. Το δεύτερο fuck-up is to follow Ioanna in any sort of presentation, because you're just an amazing speaker. So I want to thank Mindspace for putting this all together. I'm reminded about why these types of evenings are so important by my mother. I talk to my mother every Sunday, and I called her a couple hours ago, and she knew that I was coming to talk to you all about my fuck-ups, and she was like, "For the love of God, Michael, just don't say anything too embarrassing." Don't say anything. Just keep it clean. Don't say anything too embarrassing. It's the family. And I'm sadly going to disappoint my mother, so yet another fuck up to add to the list. It's also just incredibly liberating to be taking part in anything that has fuck up in the title, because I figure no matter what I do, I can say I was going with the theme of the evening. And I accomplished it. I fucked up completely. I have a wealth of things that I could share with you about things I have done wrong in my life. And I would imagine anyone in this room this evening has that same sort of long list of times that we have messed up. The problem for me wasn't what am I going to talk about, but how am I going to limit my talk to 15 minutes, because I have such a wealth of material. And then a couple of weeks ago, and this sort of will be a theme throughout my talk, a couple of weeks ago, by chance, I saw a posting from Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin's an American astronaut. He's the second man to walk on the moon. And I think because he knew I was having problems figuring out what I was going to say, he posted on Facebook this photo of Buzz coming out of the military academy and saying, "Here I am, finishing university, and I twice applied for a Rhodes Scholarship." A Rhodes Scholarship gives young Americans the opportunity to study in the UK at Oxford or Cambridge. It's extremely prestigious. Ioanna's boyfriend, Bill Clinton, had one. A lot of incredibly important American politicians have these Rhodes Scholarships. And Buzz said, "I applied twice for the Rhodes Scholarship, and twice I was rejected, and it devastated me." And he said, "I know for a fact, had I received the Rhodes Scholarship, I would have never walked on the moon." So it's exactly what you're saying. Don't look at it as a rejection. Look at it as a reorientation to something else. And we all have those reorientations. I'm also very cognizant of the fact that it's a little strange, at least for me, to stand up in front of a group of people and talk about myself. Kind of like, oh my God, I am so interesting. So I have tempered that egoism with a series of incredibly horrible pictures of myself to show you that there's nothing wrong here. This is me on my very first day of college. I know some of you have gone to university or school in the United States. One of the horrible rites of passage that American universities make you do is on the very first day you arrive, you have to go take a photo, which will be your photo ID for the following 4 years. But even more so, and here's an interesting observation if you didn't know, in most American universities, they would take all of these photos and publish them in a book that every single member of the university community got. We, at the college I went to, called it the pig book, because we thought everyone looked like a pig, because it's your first day, you're freaked out, you're a little crazy. At Harvard, anyone want to guess what they call it at Harvard? Facebook. They called it the Facebook, and that's why we have Facebook today. So this is me on my very first day of college back in August of 1987, some 30 years ago, which is a little frightening. I graduated from a high school in North Carolina where I had excelled in science and mathematics. I was going to go and I was going to major in chemistry. I was going to major in biology. I was going to maybe go on to med school. I was going to be amazing. I was going to be a scientist. It was going to be incredible. Everything had prepared me to go and study sciences and be a scientist. I had it in my blood. It was something I loved. It was something I was extremely interested in. I was extremely motivated to go and spend time in these excellent laboratories. It's why I chose the university that I went to. And then somewhere in the middle of my first semester, I was like, holy shit, I don't like science. I don't want to be a scientist. I don't know what I want to do. And suddenly, like, the entire future seemed blank, and I had no freaking idea what to study. And for basically 2 to 3 semesters, I floundered, to use a lovely English expression. I just grasped at any straw, trying to figure out what would motivate me, what I was interested in, what was going to be the path for me, what I needed to do. I stopped taking sciences. I took art history. I took classics. I studied Thucydides and Plato and all sorts of crazy stuff. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll be a classics major, which my mom, talk about great news for my mom. I'm going to be a classics major. She's like, okay, you're great. It's like I was going to have a doctor for a son, and now he's going to be an unemployed archaeologist. I had no idea what I was going to do. And in the third semester of sort of trying desperately to get direction, one of my friends said, hey, I'm going to take Russian. Why don't you come to Russian class with me just for the first day, see if you like it, we'll see how it goes. And I was actually going to go and try taking Italian. I'm half Italian, and I always thought it would be interesting to learn that side of my family's language and figure out what was going on. But no, instead, because you're in college, I went to the class with my friend. He dropped out after a week. I ended up loving Russian. Within a semester, I was taking Russian history, I was taking Russian literature. I became totally absorbed and interested in Russian and everything involved with Russia. It was completely random. If this friend had not suggested it to me, I could be that unemployed archaeologist that I dreamed of being. But instead, it led me on a career path that was completely different. And in my mind, you can't be afraid to have those periods of complete non-direction. You have to embrace them as a period where you can explore and figure out what your next step is going to be. You also have to realize that sometimes the craziest suggestions from outside people are going to be the ones that lead you to what you're actually meant to do in life. So, I don't know why I have my tongue out. I don't know why my friend Martin has his tongue out, and I have no idea who the woman in the middle is. This is on a boat in the Volga River in 1993. I end up majoring in Russian and then go on to study Russian history. I loved it. This was because I had great instructors at the university, and I loved the act of teaching and conveying information. It was fascinating to me. It was a great give and take between students and a professor, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to teach, and I want to teach Russian history. So I ended up going to graduate school after I graduated, and studying Russian history. I spent the summer of '93 cruising the Volga River, going and learning Russian. I also became an academic for all intents and purposes, started working on my master's degree, got my master's degree, and then went on for a PhD. I rapidly discovered that there's a big difference between wanting to teach and being an academic. That those two things, teaching is only actually a small part of being an academic. That there's a lot of research, there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of other things that go into an academic lifestyle that I didn't enjoy so much. But I persisted. I entered graduate school in 1992. I exited graduate school 7 years later, 1999, with a master's degree and an unfinished dissertation. This is not an uncommon story. There are other academics out there, or academic wannabes, who've been through the same thing. But my lesson from this, from what I consider a failure, is that you can't give in to the sunken cost phenomenon. Too often we continue doing things because we've already spent a lot of time doing them. We just keep going because at this point I would have wasted 2 years. At this point I would have wasted 3 years. Why give up my dissertation now? I would have wasted 5 years. So instead I got to the 7-year point and I finally said, okay, enough. It's time to actually get out and do something else. It's not easy. I still give in to this thought a lot of times, but you have to be cognizant of the fact that just because you've put in a lot of effort doesn't mean it's not a good thing to say, you know what, this isn't working and I need to move on. You can't keep doing something just because you've been doing it for a long time. This is another great person in my life, Paula DeVos. Paula actually got kicked out of graduate school. She's sort of the opposite side of me. She loved being an academic, and at the University of North Carolina, where I went, they told her she didn't have what it took to be an academic. Paula said, that's bullshit. I am nothing except a history professor. Paula worked her ass off, got into UC Berkeley, got her PhD, and is now a history professor somewhere else at the University of California, San Diego. You shouldn't know, you have to know when you have your passions and they're right, and you can't let obstacles stand in your way. At the same time, you also have to know when it's time to call it a day and move on. My way out was to a computer technology training company. I loved teaching. Technology had always been something interesting to me. And these guys were just like, you can speak to an audience and you actually understand the technology, we'll give you a job. It was my escape hatch from graduate school. I did it and I had a great time with it for several years. This is a really horrible picture of a group of people drinking and eating. This is all of my coworkers from the club, from the technology company. This I have no idea, but it was also at the same period doing crazy stuff with the technology group. This was fun. This was great. This was a lot of everything I needed, because it was exactly what graduate school was not. It was a great group of interesting, dedicated people working hard. Not that graduate school wasn't that, that's a bad way to put it, but it was just very, very different. It wasn't what I was supposed to do. It was a way for me to change my life, but it wasn't a way for me to actually make a living for the rest of my life. And again, someone from outside had to come and push me onto the next stage. And that ended up being the State Department. To get into the State Department, to become a diplomat for the United States, you have to take a series of tests. They're freaking scary. They're hard. A lot of people take them, and a lot of people fail them. And I had always thought about taking them, and I had always thought, but what if I fail? What if I don't pass? What if I can't get in? What if I'm not smart enough? What if I can't take the test? What if I can't do it? And I have another good friend, Elizabeth Horst, who was in the State Department, and the first test you have to pass for the State Department is an all-day written exam. You sign up, you go to an auditorium, and you sit there and you take an exam for 8 hours, and that's all you do all day. And my friend was like, yeah, that's all you do all day, but it's free. All you're gonna have done is wasted a Saturday if you don't go. And you'll never know unless you go. And I will admit, when the alarm went off at 7:30 on a Saturday after I worked a long week, I thought about just skipping it and not going and not taking the test. But I decided, I have to do it or else I'm never gonna know. And that's the final thing. You can't let fear of failure be a failure. You have to be able to say, you know what? I'm gonna go do this, and if I fail, I fail. But unless I try, I'm never going to know if I fail or if I'll succeed. You have to be willing to take the scary, hard stuff and give it a try. So I think back to the Buzz Aldrin picture, and I realized I really did not, as a kid of 18, have any indication that I would be standing in Athens, Greece before you all 30 years later giving this talk. I would never in a million years have guessed that. But if you don't open yourself up when you fail to other possibilities, you're never going to get to those unexpected directions that might be exactly where you're supposed to be. I'll tell one fuck up from my current career. Before I worked in Athens, I was working in Washington, D.C. at the State Department's Operations Center. The State Department Operations Center is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week monitoring service for the Secretary of State and his or her staff. So basically, it's 5 or 6 people sitting in a room, watching the news, watching email, paying attention to what's going on all around the world, talking to our embassies and consulates all around the world, and if something starts going wrong, we start calling people. We have a shared email system so that anytime we got a message about something, everyone who was working in the operations center saw it, so that you knew what was going on. Because if the secretary called up, they didn't care whether you were on the call or someone else was on the call, they just wanted you to be able to give that information. So I had received a call with some information, and I was supposed to send it to one person and the shared inbox so that my colleagues could see what was going on. Instead, I sent it to that one person and 5,000 of the most important people in the State Department. I sent it to the wrong address. I sent it to the alerts address rather than just the shared address.
Come on.
It's autofill.
Yeah.
It autofilled in the wrong address, and I didn't notice it, and I just hit it. The thing that was amazing, well, the two takeaways I have from this. The very first thing I did was I told my boss. I was like, oh my God, you're never gonna believe. And she was like, what did you do? And I told her, and she said, okay, we'll work at making this right. The second thing that was amazing was the number of people in high positions in the State Department who emailed me with funny stories of how they'd fucked up. They were like, you're gonna feel crappy about this, but you won't believe this. Like 10 years ago, I did this, and this is how I fucked up. And it was incredibly encouraging to hear all of those stories from people about how they had screwed up, how it doesn't matter, just take it under your belt, learn from it, and move on. So, again, thank you to Mindspace, because that's the message to take away from it. When you fuck up, move on.